September 24th, 2005. A 35-year-old woman vanishes on Mount of the Holy Cross, Colorado. That very same day, an urgent search is launched. Hundreds of volunteers, professional mountain rescue teams, search dogs, helicopters scouring the skies. But nothing is found. No clothing, no backpack, no trace. And this is the real question at the heart of this case. Why? Despite one of the largest searches in Colorado history, has Michelle Vanek remained unfound for nearly 20 years? Where did she fall? Or were we searching in the wrong place from the beginning? Because when the answer finally came, it didn't come from more searchers, but from changing the question we were asking. Michelle Vanek was a healthy, active, and vibrant woman. She had been an outstanding track athlete in high school, a star in long-distance running and cross-country. As an adult, Michelle continued her passion for sports. She ran marathons regularly and competed in grueling triathlons, those endurance tests that involve swimming, cycling, and running non-stop for hours. Anyone who saw her thought, here is a mother of four with extraordinary fitness, ready to tackle any challenge. But there was one critical detail, often overlooked, that turned everything tragic. Michelle had virtually no experience hiking at high altitude. This was her first attempt at a 14er, those Colorado peaks over 14,000 feet, more than 4,267 meters. Mount of the Holy Cross is 14,005 feet tall, with the North Ridge route being over 12 miles round trip and gaining more than 5,600 feet in elevation. At that altitude, the air becomes dramatically thinner. Oxygen levels drop sharply, making it difficult for newcomers. And even experienced climbers can't always predict how their body will react. Altitude doesn't just challenge your physical strength, it attacks your brain directly. Oxygen deprivation, hypoxia, triggers altitude sickness. Severe headaches, extreme fatigue, nausea, and most dangerously, impaired judgment. And naturally, that leads to everyday decisions becoming foggy and dangerous, mistaking the trail, misjudging treacherous terrain, or simply failing to recognize you're in trouble. Even an elite athlete like Michelle wasn't immune. Her body was trained for high-intensity effort at sea level, but it had never acclimated to thin mountain air. That deadly combination, superb fitness but zero high-altitude experience, turned her first real mountaineering trip into a mystery that haunted people for nearly 2 decades. Michelle, an energetic mother, a woman in excellent health, just a few hundred yards from the summit, vanished in broad daylight without leaving a single trace. Around 7 a.m. on September 24th, 2005, Michelle Vanek started the hike from the Half Moon campground area, accompanied by a friend, Eric Sawyer, a family acquaintance who had already summited more than 38 14ers in Colorado. This was Michelle's first time on Mount of the Holy Cross, one of the tallest and most rugged peaks in the state. The North Ridge route, nearly 12 miles round trip, over 5,600 feet of elevation gain, crossing Half Moon Pass, dropping into the East Cross Creek Valley, then scrambling up steep, rocky slopes to the summit. The morning weather was perfect. Clear autumn skies, light breeze, excellent visibility. No one, not even Michelle, imagined this would be a fateful day. Michelle wore a red top, black pants, brand new Sorel hiking boots, and carried a small backpack with extra layers and water. She was full of excitement, smiling, posing for the last known photo with her companion before they set off. They hiked steadily through dense pine forest, over Half Moon Pass at more than 11,500 feet, then down into the green valley below. But from there, the terrain started to change. Loose rocks, steep inclines, thinner air, making every step feel heavier. Around 1 p.m., with only a few hundred yards left to the summit, at over 13,800 feet, Michelle began showing clear signs of severe exhaustion. Altitude sickness struck hard, headache, extreme fatigue, clouded thinking. She had run out of water hours earlier. Her body was shaking, yet she still tried to keep going. Eric Sawyer, who was moving faster, suggested, "You rest here. I'll push to the summit and come right back. If you want to start heading down, just follow the trail. I'll catch up with you." Michelle agreed. This was the fatal breaking point of the entire case. The two separated. Eric Sawyer continued the final stretch to the summit. Michelle, she stopped trying for the top, sat down to rest against the rocks, just a short distance from the peak. That was the last time anyone saw Michelle, in broad daylight, on a popular trail where dozens of other hikers were passing by. Eric reached the summit at 1:42 p.m., stayed only minutes because of freezing winds and deteriorating weather. He descended the exact same route, calling Michelle's name repeatedly, asking every hiker he passed, all the way down. No one had seen her. No one remembered a woman in a red top, black pants, hiking alone. When Eric reached the trailhead in the late afternoon, Michelle never showed up. There was no sign she had made it down safely. In panic, Eric called 911 and reported a missing person. The 911 call immediately triggered search and rescue protocols. The Vail Mountain Rescue Group was mobilized. In the hours and days that followed, the search rapidly grew to an unprecedented scale. According to official records, it became one of the largest searches in Colorado history. Hundreds of volunteers, search dogs, professional mountain rescue teams, helicopters scanning from above. The terrain was gridded. Searches were systematically planned by sector. Main trails, the area around her last known location, and likely descent routes were all covered. Despite the massive scale, the mountain is enormous. Rugged terrain, deep gullies, thick forest, vertical cliffs, swallowed every possible trace. No physical evidence linked to Michelle Vanek was ever located. No calls for help, no witnesses, not a single dropped item. After days of non-stop effort, the operation had to be scaled back. According to rescue teams and the Eagle County Sheriff's Office, Mount of the Holy Cross is one of the most challenging search areas in Colorado, with hundreds of rock chutes, steep couloirs, and off-trail areas are almost invisible to the naked eye, making it extremely difficult to detect a victim even at very close range. But after nearly 20 years of unsuccessful searches, the dream was interpreted differently. Not as a sign from beyond, but as a reminder that the old approach wasn't working anymore. If they wanted answers, it was time to try something completely different. Not by believing the dream, but by breaking the cycle. That dream led to a decision never before made in this case, forming an all-female search team, the first one ever since the day Michelle disappeared. Not to literally follow the dream, but to shatter the nearly 20-year routine. The new team did not approach the mountain the same way as before. They used modern mapping technology, detailed terrain data, a complete re-examination of old reports, and especially a fresh look at assumptions that had been ignored. They stopped asking, "Where have we already searched?" and started asking a survival-based question. If Michelle was disoriented, exhausted, dehydrated, where would basic human instinct take her to survive? Lower elevation? Toward water? Shelter from the wind? They searched not where she got lost, but where a desperate person might try to go. And that change in perspective led them to an area that had never been thoroughly searched before. A place where, months later, the mountain would finally speak. September 13th, 2024, in the steep, dangerous northeast face, a sheer cliff area below the North Ridge that had barely been examined in detail. Team members Erica German and Zach Smith spotted a flash of red fabric among the boulders, part of Michelle's jacket. Then more items appeared from the cold crevices. Torn, time-weathered clothing, trekking poles, green gloves and white mittens, small backpack containing Toyota Sequoia car keys, water bottle, and the necklace Ben gave Michelle on a Las Vegas trip. A small bone fragment, later confirmed to be hers. A few weeks later, October 10th, 2024, the team returned with cadaver dogs and located additional remains of Michelle in a deep rock crevice, only about half a mile from where she was last seen. After nearly 20 years of cruel silence, Michelle Vanek was no longer a missing person. The mountain had given her back, late but fully, so her family could finally have a place to light candles, a grave to visit, and closure to start healing. Authorities and the Vail Mountain Rescue Group officially concluded no evidence of foul play, no signs of violence, no third-party involvement. This was purely an accident. The most plausible reconstruction, based on where the remains and belongings were found, is this. After Eric summited and started down, Michelle, severely debilitated by altitude sickness, dehydrated for hours, mind clouded, did not stay put as planned. She attempted to descend on her own, following instinct. But at over 13,800 feet, thin air distorted every decision. Instead of staying on the main trail, she veered off-trail into the northeast boulder field, a maze of steep, fractured rock and drop-offs. She slipped on loose terrain, fell into a deep crevice roughly 100 to 130 feet down, where her body and gear remained trapped for nearly 2 decades, buried under winter snow and summer rock slides. No dramatic villain or sinister plot, just a series of small, innocent choices that compounded. First 14er, without proper acclimatization, running out of water midway, separating near the summit. Trying to descend alone while judgment was impaired, Michelle Vanek passed quietly in broad daylight, only a few hundred yards sideways from a busy trail, but separated by invisible barriers of rock and fate. Some tragedies don't need a perpetrator. They only need time and endless, soul-crushing waiting. Michelle's family waited nearly 2 decades, not because they were certain she would be found, but because losing hope meant losing her forever. They lived with that emptiness, dinner tables with an empty chair, family photos forever missing one smile, questions forever unanswered. Now that waiting is over, not with a miracle or a perfect ending, but with the plain, harsh truth returned by the same mountain that held her for nearly 20 years, among cold stone and relentless wind. Michelle Vanek is no longer a ghost haunting endless theories. She is home, late but whole, carrying a powerful lesson about persistent hope, unbreakable family love, and humility before nature's majesty. Michelle's legacy isn't the tragedy of her disappearance, but how her family faced it, never giving up, never forgetting, and finally finding peace in the truth. Today, winds still sweep across the silent cliffs of Mount of the Holy Cross. But the mountain no longer keeps its secret. Michelle is free, and her family, at last, is too. The disappearance of Michelle Vanek is more than just an isolated hiking accident. It stands out because Michelle remained missing for nearly 20 years, despite one of the largest searches in Colorado history being launched right from the very first days. It stands out because her remains were found very close to the last spot where a witness confirmed seeing her. And most importantly, the truth only came to light when the search strategy changed. Not by involving more people, but by asking a different question. This isn't just the story of one missing woman. It's a lesson for every cold case that drags on for decades. If you value stories told with truth, respect, and without unfounded speculation, please follow the channel for more journeys seeking justice and closure. And if you head into the wilderness or up a mountain, remember, nature isn't cruel, but it never forgives complacency. Prepare well, stay together, and always leave a trace. If you have thoughts or questions based only on confirmed facts, feel free to comment respectfully. And if you'd like to keep following other missing persons stories, retold accurately based on records, without speculation, always putting the people first, subscribe to the channel, not for thrills, but to remember, because behind every name is a family still waiting.